Hello, my name is Daniel Adibi, and I'm a rising sophomore in high school. When I was in 6th grade, I read a New York Times article that left a lasting impression on me. It was about a young Iraqi girl who escaped the oppressive Saddam Hussein regime. While in a refugee camp in the Netherlands, a kind man gifted her a red bike, and she later recounted that this small gesture made her feel like a human again. She never forgot the man's kindness, and 24 years later, finally reunited with him to thank him after posting online and even traveling back to the Netherlands to discover his identity. Throughout my own childhood, I've read countless books on the refugee crisis and watched multiple documentaries on personal accounts of the refugee experience. And the main takeaway that I got from learning about the refugee crisis is that nobody wants to leave their homeland. And once a refugee does, they lose their sense of culture around them and have to adapt to a new, strange environment. When I was in middle school, I began to volunteer with a kind and generous man from my local community, David. David worked at a resettlement agency called HIAS, and I remember my mom and I would drive around our local community and collect items from a list David gave us from generous neighbors. And these were common household items like kitchen items, tablets, stuffed animals, bikes, etc. On a few weekends, my mom and I would join David as we traveled to Philadelphia to distribute these items to various refugee families. Like the young girl in the New York Times article, I recall refugees on their bikes screaming with excitement when they saw David's car approaching. And I realized that not only were they excited that David was there to deliver items, but a part of their happiness also stemmed from somebody visiting them who cared about them. While on these trips, I met a number of families who were trying their best to create new lives for themselves. And I listened to their hopes, their struggles, and their dreams. Many of the refugees I spoke to were from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. And I was able to relate to some of their accounts as a child of second-generation Iranian immigrants. Growing up, I had heard stories of some of the hardships that my grandparents had to face when emigrating from Iran to the United States at the height of the Iranian hostage crisis. They had to leave their homes, their wealth, their family, and their homeland. And they had to flee to a new world where people didn't speak the same language and where they had to adapt. Even though they weren't refugees and didn't leave a war-stricken country, they knew that they would not be able to return to Iran with the new regime and with the deteriorating relations with the United States. But in addition to all that, many of these refugees have experienced trauma from the loss of a family member, war, or even torture. Everything has been taken from them, and they had to flee to a new world where they had to restart and build an entire new life for themselves. Perhaps the most meaningful experience for me was when I met an Iraqi boy similar in age to me. I learned that his father had not been able to escape and had died in Iraq, and he came to the US with his newly widowed single mother and younger sister. That day, he had requested a keyboard, which we gladly donated to him. And the look of excitement in his eyes when he saw the keyboard is something I will never forget. So I sat down with him and I taught him a few scales on the keyboard. And then it hit me. Even though we both had musical interests, I wasn't sure if he would ever have the opportunity to take musical lessons, as I am fortunate enough to be able to. I realized that we were two boys with the same interests, but with very different futures ahead of us. On the ride home that day, David turned to me and recounted the famous quote, "To whom much is given, much is expected." I held on to that mantra, and it inspired me to give back to this vulnerable population. Over time, I realized that I wanted to help refugee children obtain the school supplies that they would need to succeed. I believe that education is the key to a person's future, and I also believe it is how refugees can begin to build a new life for themselves in a world where everything has been taken from them. So now, fast forward to the fall of 8th grade, when I met Adibi Kolipara, another motivated middle school student, through an organization known as the Young Entrepreneurs Academy. Together, we created Refugee School Supplies, a nonprofit organization with the goal of giving refugees in the Philadelphia area the school supplies they need for success. At Refugee School Supplies, we collect monetary donations through our website and use them to purchase bundles, or prepackaged backpacks that vary depending on age, and contain all the supplies a refugee would need for the entire school year. After coming up with the original business idea, Adibi and I quickly reached out to strategic community partners and also began our fundraising efforts. We also built our website, refugeeschoolsupplies.org, and built a supplemental platform that allowed for refugees to request wish lists of school-related items. Through our fundraising efforts, we will have delivered over 200 bundles to refugee families by the end of June, and we have received and honored multiple requests for a wish list of school-related items through our website. We have also been featured on 6ABC, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Fox 29 News for our work with refugees. So, what can you learn from my experiences? Well, the reason we were able to accomplish so much with Refugee School Supplies was because of a deep and an underlying motivation to help others. As I said before, the refugee crisis is an issue that I've always cared about, and I grew up reading books about it and watching documentaries about it. But to then speak to refugees in person and hear about their experiences was an entire new experience for me. By surrounding myself with their stories, I was able to foster my passion and use it to make a change. So, if you see an issue that you're passionate about, don't be passive. Don't hope for the best and let the problem escape you. Do something. Let your empathy and let your passion drive you forward. It can be something as small as donating to an organization or volunteering or raising awareness, but as long as you help another human being, the impact is immeasurable. You'll leave a lasting impact on the person you helped, and seeing how your actions positively impact another human being is one of the most gratifying and one of the most fulfilling feelings you'll ever experience. I can still remember the look of the faces of the refugees that I helped in middle school, the Iraqi boy's face when I told him a few notes on the keyboard, and the look of shared understanding from Afghan and Iranian refugees when my mom and I would speak Farsi to them. For her, it was Farsi. For me, it was more like broken Farsi. But the point is that they felt accepted, and they knew that there were people who cared about them. So if there's anything that you take away from my speech, let it be that every person has a responsibility to help others. If you see an issue that you care about, immerse yourself in the topic. Speak to different people. Read about it. Involve yourself in the community. But whatever you do, take action. Because when we help each other, we build a more compassionate society in which we move forward together instead of focusing on individual gain. In our ever-changing world of technology and globalization, it is small moments of kindness like these that remind us of our shared humanity. Thank you.